Hello, readers, friends, and everyone else out there. It's Aaron, and welcome to another episode of One Row Reviews, where I get yarn untangled from this slobbery moose that my dog has brought to me, and also talk about the books I've been reading and the books I've been writing for as long as it takes me to add one row to this project. Apparently with yarn that has been tangled around a slobbery moose. So, anyway, two books I've been reading this past week. One of them is The Happy Writer by Marissa Meyer. I pre-ordered this a while back because I saw that Marissa Meyer was doing a book on writing, and I thought, I really like Marissa Meyer's books. I would like to read her book on craft. I guess it's not all about craft, it's about craft and productivity, and I think there's some stuff on like platform and social media in there. It sounds like it covers quite a few topics. I've gotten through. I'm kind of bouncing around a little bit in the book because it's one of those you don't have to necessarily read it in order. You can bounce around between the different things you think will be most useful to. So I do intend to read the whole thing, but I figure, well, I'm going to jump ahead to the part that I feel is most pertinent to me at the moment. It's nothing earth-shattering, nothing that's going to completely revolutionize my process or anything like that, but very good, and definitely some things in there that have given me a new perspective on some things to think about. And really, isn't that what reading is all about anyway, regardless of what it is that you're reading about? So that one has been quite interesting. I've been enjoying that. The other book that I have been working on this week is an indie fantasy novel called Wildmane by Todd Fahnestock. Todd's an author I discovered last summer when he was one of our presenters at the Wyoming Writers Incorporated conference. And in the lead up to the conference, I was reading some of the descriptions of his books and going, am I not already reading this guy's books? Like, these sound right up my alley. So I picked up a couple of his books at the conference, got to have a few conversations with him. Really nice guy. Has a really interesting story, not just in terms of his writing career, but just in terms of how his life has gone. Really interesting stuff, which he talks about in a book called Falling to Fly that I read last year, and I highly, highly recommend if you are a writer. It talks about not only his journey as a writer and as a person and how those two things intersect, but it gives a very interesting look at how the publishing field has changed over the last decade or so, because he started out as a traditionally published writer. He got, I don't remember how many books, published through Tor, which is, I think, kind of like every epic fantasy writer's like ultimate dream, right, is to be published by Tor, because it seems like all the, well, not all, but a lot of the big name fantasy writers are published through them. So everyone wants to get a deal through them. And he did. And it went well for him in some ways and not in others. And anyway, now he's indie and really doing very well. And reading the story of how he got, how he initially got his publishing deals and how he transitioned to the new part of his career and all of that is very interesting and very inspiring. And I highly recommend to any author, not just fantasy authors, but really any author looking at breaking into publishing, be it traditional or indie. Yeah, definitely pick up Falling to Fly. I think it'll be interesting. But that is not the Todd Fahnestock book that I read this week. The Todd Fahnestock book that I read this week was Wildmane which is a fantasy that takes place in this world where magic hasn't existed for a while. It almost destroyed the world, and so people are very suspicious of it now, and they're also very suspicious of anyone who can read or write, because the thread weavers, the people who used magic back in the day, they all learned about it through books. And so everyone thinks of reading and writing as sort of this really dangerous thing. Every village, though, tends to have one person who can read or write so that communication and commerce can still continue with the written word as a tool. And one of our protagonists is the one person in the village who can read or write. She's a young girl, or well, I forget exactly how old she is. I say young girl, but I think she's more like... I don't remember exactly. I think if she were the only point of view character, the book might be considered YA. But the other point of view character is this guy who, I'm not entirely sure what to call him. I guess you'd call him a demigod. He's like a mortal who has a god inhabiting his body. So he's been immortal for a couple thousand years now, and he has this... I think his character arc is going to be really interesting, because there's been a lot of discussion with him about how he's had to watch all the people that he loves just disappear over the long life that he's had. And he has somebody that he really cares about now, and he's trying not to get too close to them or let them get too attached to him, because he knows what's going to happen eventually. And I'm almost out of row here, so I better talk a little bit about how writing has gone. It went better this week than last. It was still a little slow compared to what I would have liked, but I was getting caught up from being sick. You know, when you're sick for almost 2 weeks out of the month, there's a lot of stuff. It's like you're having to get caught up on everything, and so there was all that. But progress that I did make, I was very happy with. You know, there are still a couple more things that I realized. I'm like, oh yeah, I'm gonna have to make sure that I go back and fix that in the next step in the process of this book. But so in terms of forward progress, there wasn't as much, but there was still a lot of really useful things that happened. And that's all for this week. I hope you enjoyed, and we'll see you next time.